Okay, well, the purpose of this meeting is to provide us with a logical argument for liberty versus lockdown, because as you know, we've been in lockdown for a year, and I'd like to make a claim that this isn't right. Even though there are arguments for it, I don't think they're compelling arguments, and there's good arguments for not having lockdown because it's an infringement of liberties. So I'd like to take my presentation, and the purpose of my presentation really is to provide people with arguments, because it's a very convoluted and difficult position to take. If you're going to take the line that lockdown is bad and we need to regain our freedoms, and someone's bound to ask, but what about lives? You see, surely the government has got the right to save lives, and that saving lives must come first. So we're going to have a look at that argument and see how it works out. But I'd like to start with this, which is I call a self-evident truth. Sometimes in philosophy they're called axioms. An axiom is a self-evident truth. It's a starting point. And I'd like to make the claim that we are all, in this country at least, born free. You know the song, born free, born free. Each of us are born with innate and inviolable natural rights. Now, these aren't rights given to us by a government. They are natural rights given to us by Mother Nature. Oh, every animal is born free. We're an animal, we're born free. So we've got a natural right to freedom, and the purpose of a government is to protect those rights of freedom. Now, we've got a number of basic freedoms which I believe are inviolable. Freedom of movement, freedom of association with friends and family, freedom of speech, freedom to trade our wares with other traders, and the freedom to vote. Now, you can see that over the last year, all of these freedoms have been attacked systematically and relentlessly, with good cause, of course. Not only do we've had an unprecedented attack on our personal freedoms. Now, these freedoms are positive freedoms, but we are also allowed negative freedoms, which means this is freedom to move, freedom to associate, freedom to speech. But there's always freedoms from. See, we are equipped, I believe, with freedoms from coercion. We should be free from coercion. We should be free from force and the threat of coercion and force. We should be freed from unjust confinements, and we should be free from theft and fraud. Now, the purpose of government is to enhance and to protect our freedoms. They should provide for the positive freedoms, and they should protect us from the negative freedoms. We should be freedom from force, you see. Now, that's what the law is for, and that's why we employ governments. You see, in a system, political system is not there. Sorry, the political system is to stop us from being anarchy and where we all have our own police force and we like the Wild West. We don't want the Wild West where everybody uses force to protect their house. So we subjugate the use of force to the government, and the government acts as our agents to protect our rights. I say that again, the government acts as an agent to protect our basic rights. That's its fundamental reason for existence. Why do we have a government? It's not to keep us rich, it's not to keep us healthy, it's to keep us free. Now, leading on to this, healthcare is not a political primary. Freedom is. Freedom is. Even the preservation of life itself, because they'll say we must save lives. No, we don't, because the governments will sacrifice lives, and they have done through 2 world wars. If you think about World War II in particular, the government sacrificed many lives in order to protect our freedoms from a dictatorial government, i.e. Germany's government. And the people who actually signed up, they actually sacrificed their own life to protect the freedoms of those people at home, the freedoms I've already mentioned. So the argument that the primary purpose of a government is to save life is not true, because otherwise we wouldn't have nuclear weapons, we wouldn't have soldiers, we wouldn't have the Air Force, because the purpose of a nuclear weapon is to kill people. That's all it's for. And the reason they kill people is to protect our freedoms. That's the primary purpose of a government. So this is the big picture. This is why it gets confusing, because knowledge is hierarchical. It's very important that everybody has a clear understanding of the hierarchy of importance of different principles. The primary principle for a government is to provide for freedom. And then only after it has provided for freedom can it turn its attentions properly to other things, such as health, such as economics, such as education. The error that I believe the government is making is to abandon freedom in favor of economics, and to abandon freedom in favor of, in this case, of health. They're saying, I'm sorry, but we must destroy your political freedoms in order to pay the health service. It's wrong, because they've abandoned their purpose. Their purpose is freedom. Saving lives is now done at the sacrifice of our freedoms. And it's wrong, because that's not the government's job. The government's job is to keep us free. The government's primary purpose is not to keep us free from a bloody virus. I swore, sorry. The purpose of a government is to keep us free. It's the role of the NHS and the role of individuals as making their own individual choices together with the NHS. It's a subordinate set, but that has to be done within the context of freedom. The primary purpose of a government is the protection of our freedoms. We do not expect it to violate our fundamental freedoms. The primary purpose of a government is not to keep us safe, it's to keep us free. If it's not keeping us free, it's a no-good government. The purpose of a government is to protect our freedoms, even when faced with health risks. And the reason that this is so pernicious is that the health risks they're saving us from are inherent in the system. There is never going to be a time in the future where there are no threats to our health, because threats to our health is just a fact of life which cannot be eradicated. So if they're going to argue that we must lose our freedoms until all the threats have gone away, we'll be lost our freedoms forever.
Yes.
Any government that fails to protect our freedoms and our liberties is acting in violation of its only legitimate moral purpose. Any government that uses force or power, its physical power, to violate our inviolable rights of citizens is in breach of its legitimate mandate and should either change itself or should be changed by the people. Now, our government is systematically violating our fundamental rights, freedoms and liberties under the guise of its simplistic mantra, save the NHS. Do you remember flatten the curve from a year ago? Flatten the curve? Well, that kind of made some sense if you wanted to go that way, but we're a year on, there is no flattening of the curve. And there never will be, because viruses are endemic in the system. You can't get rid of them. So why are they doing this? I don't know why they're doing this. I've come up with 3 potential answers to why they're doing it. Number one, they've forgotten about the fundamentality principle of freedom. They forgot what they're there for. They either forgot or they never knew in the first place. I mean, Boris Johnson is not a philosopher, he's a journalist. You know, he doesn't really know, I don't think he knows what the job is. And I think, or maybe he is, maybe he's cleverer than I give him credit for. Maybe he does know what he's doing. But let's just say they never knew about the fundamentality of the principle of freedom. Freedom is a fundamental right to every citizen of the UK, and anyone who violates that freedom, every government that violates that freedom is wrong, because that's their primary purpose. I've got a second theory, which is this: they were bounced by the scientists. The scientists bounced him. See, since the invention of nuclear weapons, the scientists have discovered something, which is if you walk into a government office and say, unless you do as I say, everyone will die, which is exactly what happened in 1944, when Albert Einstein and the scientists went into the American government and said, the Germans are developing a nuclear weapon. Unless we have a nuclear weapon first, we're all going to die. And so the the president said, what can we do about it? And the scientists said, give me as much money as you've got. And they did, because they had to. Well, that did a little turn in the minds of the scientists. All you have to do now, if you're a scientist, is to come up with a plausible end of the world scenario, and you get access to unlimited amounts of cash. I think it's happened with climate change, and I think it's happening now with COVID. If the scientist walks in, draws a line on his graph and says, Mr. Johnson, let me show you this line. This is the reinfection rate. And if you don't do something, 40,000 people a day will be dying and it'll be on your watch. And Mr. Bill Johnson says, is this true? And he says, yes. Well, it might be true. The only way to be safe is to be safe. And the scientist says, you've got to give us everything we want. And he did, because he was scared not to. That's my second alternative. My third alternative is, it's the Great Reset. I don't know if you know about the reset, but it is part of a major plan. It's a plan. It's the reset. And I don't know if you've noticed that Boris has used the secret code word, which is Build Back Better. Build Back Better is the phrase of the reset. It's done on purpose. So I don't know which one it is. I would like to think that they were stupid and they didn't know what government was for. I shouldn't say stupid, ill-informed. I'd like to think that they were bounced by the scientists, because that's fixable, we can unbounce them. If they're malicious, we've got a major problem, because they know what they're doing and they're doing it very well.
Yeah.
The government is either misguided or wrong or malicious. I don't know which one it is, but I'm learning. I keep, depending on the mood I'm in, I either get scared to death because I think we're on the verge of a socialist dictatorship in cahoots with big tech, or it's just clumsiness. They dropped the ball.
Yeah.
I think we should be ready to reassert our fundamental rights. I think this is what it's for. And our aim is to put effectively the public servants back in their box. They're called public servants. Why? Because they're supposed to serve our needs, and those needs are fundamentally the need to be free. They're meant to serve us, not rule us. Now, this is if we were a political party, which we're not, because there's 5 of us,
And
plus my friend Peter, who's not here. This would be my agenda for a political party, which we're not, but if we were, this would be it. A phased reduction of state controls on people's lives and businesses, a phased reduction of the coercive power of the state, the promotion of free market enterprise and trade, the rejection of the politicization of education, the news, media, and of the law. I don't know if you've noticed the law courts have been supremely politicized, especially during the Brexit years. And to empower every individual or citizen to release the productive capability of the whole nation, entrepreneurial trade, worldwide, just like the good old days when Britain was essentially a manufacturing and trading nation. To push back against the ever-increasing encroachments of the state into every single aspect of our lives, down to whether we can sing, what was that song that we weren't allowed to sing? A Land of Hope and Glory in our own bloody living rooms. The BBC had the audacity to say, well, you could sing it yourself, you are allowed. Oh, thank you very much, Mr. BBC, for allowing me to sing in my own living room. That's how audacious these people have become. And to replace government power with people power, individual sovereign rights of the individual over the power of the government. It should be that way round. The government are public servants, or at least they should be. And that's what I really want to get. If I could leave you only one visual image, it's that, you see. Because when anyone argues about this, they argue on the issue of saving lives. And I would say it's pointless being alive in a dictatorship. A lot of people gave their lives to provide us, to keep us free from a political dictatorship, but it's things step by step, law by law, encroachment by encroachment, bit by bit, we're sleepwalking into a bloody dictatorship. Yes. And the public haven't noticed. And the greatest con of all, a con man gets his victim to help him. That's the greatest brilliance of this. The person who's being conned helps the criminal, so to speak. I mean, you shouldn't say the word criminal, but maybe I should. Maybe they are. I don't know. Depends on what their motives are. So I've got a little 3-step plan. It's only in its, obviously, in its embryonic stage here. I've got a little action plan. Is what do you think we should do about this? I would like to start small and build. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got 6 people and a dog at the moment. I'd like to repeat this message to more people. Maybe if we could repeat it not exactly the same words, but essentially the same message. I'd like to do, see if we can get by law of incremental growth, like 4 becomes 8, 8 becomes 16, 16 becomes 32, 32, you know, that idea of geometric growth. So you can start small and end big quite quickly if we can get people to overcome the worst problem, which is passivity. You see, passivity. Just yeah, okay, apathy. Yeah, apathy. Apathy rules the world, but who cares? So that's the biggest problem we got. Half of the population don't know it. The other half are in agreement with it. And the people, we got a funny feeling that something's going wrong. But so long as lives are being saved, that's all that counts. Now, I want to draw another point about this. I was doing some research about what a COVID death is. If we agree that none of this would be happening unless there were a lot of COVID deaths, if there were let's put it this way, if there were very few COVID deaths, none of this would be a problem. So the question is, what is a COVID death? How does the government define the concept of the COVID death? Because Boris keeps talking about following the science. Well, if you know anything about science, you know the very first thing that a scientist does is insist upon very clear and distinct definitions. If your fundamental definition is wrong, everything that is built upon it is wrong. So how does the government define a COVID death? If you ask the average man in the street, intelligent man or woman with common sense, what a COVID death is, they say it's obvious. A COVID death is a death caused by COVID. Well, that's what you'd think it is, but it isn't. Because if you look at what the government says a COVID death is, it's a death in a person with a laboratory confirmed positive COVID-19 and has died within 60 days of the first specimen date. So you just have to die of anything. And if it's within 60 days of a positive COVID death, that's logged as a COVID death. The BBC used to call it linked to COVID. They've changed their language recently, and they've actually taken the bull by the horns and called it death caused by COVID. That's a lie. These deaths aren't caused by COVID. It's a statistical trick. Have a look at this. This is a straight copy off the website, second line down. It means that we include deaths in anyone with a confirmed COVID-19 test which occur in any setting, including hospitals and care homes where a lot of people die. Using multiple sources, it means we're less likely to underestimate the deaths. Are you kidding? I know that you don't want to underestimate it, but what about overestimating it? You don't seem to have a problem overestimating deaths, only underestimating them. What is the likelihood of them overestimating the deaths? Well, none. Now, a COVID death is, I just want to quote this again. This is a quote, death in anyone with a confirmed test in any setting. That's a quote. A COVID death includes all deaths, including those deaths not caused by COVID. So my question is, how can a death not caused by COVID be correctly classified as a COVID death? It can't. It's a statistical, and the more COVID the more COVID tests they do, the more COVID deaths will be generated, because within 60 days of this mass number of tests, some of those people will die, and they're all put down as a COVID death. Even if they were run over by a bus, it's a COVID death. Now, you may have heard these rumors before, but it's absolutely true. They're fiddling their stats, which makes me wonder why. Anyway, I didn't really want to get this. The point of this presentation is not to argue the toss over COVID, because arguing the toss over COVID leads me into the trap of talking about healthcare. And that is the very trap that I'm trying to not fall into. And this is why it's so difficult, because every time you talk about the situation, you inevitably end up talking about face masks, injections, definitions of COVID, where really that is not the issue. The issue is Freedom, not health. Freedom. So even though I mentioned that at the end, I really want to make sure that we understand and argue the case that freedom is a primary, that we have to preserve freedom. Failure to preserve freedom means we failed as a whole nation, and we will suffer the consequences in the years to come, especially our kids. Okay, well, that's the end of my presentation. That took 22 minutes. And we've got 40 minutes. So I'll stop talking for a while and just ask you what you think.
What are our options now?
Sorry, I didn't hear. Was that you, Becky?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
What are our options?
Our options at the moment are, I think, as individual people, we've got two things that we can do. Number one, rustle up some more people. That's the first thing, because it can't really be said to be a mass movement. We've got to rustle up some people because we need to get, and that's the first thing. Second thing, you've got to know what to say to people. And that's why I wanted to present this argument in the way that I have. If you copy that diagram down, you have to explain it to people. And that visual diagram that I've got there is a great help to explain it to people and not get sucked into the COVID conversation. You've got to avoid at all costs getting sucked into the COVID conversation. And the third step is to bring somebody along to our next meeting, which I'm hoping to do maybe every week or every 2 weeks to give us a chance to grow numbers. Is that right, Becky? That's my answer.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Who else?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, great. Because my
We've lost you again. All we're getting is a fuzz. You started talking, then it went fuzzy.
wow.
Oh yeah, we're kind of hearing you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's broken. Keep going.
Oh, right. It's quite difficult because there's something. I'm going to try and go out of the meeting and come back in again because I've got something going round and round on my screen.
Okay, I can hear you. Fine.
Okay.
Yeah, keep going.
Okay. Yes, I appreciate you calling me tonight, and I appreciate what you've said. I've got two backgrounds that I come from. One is the NHS, and the other is from a German mother. And both of those things give me some insight. My German mother came over at the very end of the war. And as a little girl, I grew up hearing all the stories of how the war began. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay. And what I have found, what has unsettled me is what I have experienced in my life here now through COVID and what I remember my mother telling me. And I'll explain this one thing. I was asked by a neighbour if I was going to have the vaccine. I was a bit taken aback, but because I'm an honest person and I replied. And actually, the person got really angry with me. And I realised from what my mother had told me that fear is the big driver of most people, particularly the more older you are. And I realised that all the things my mother told me of what happened, because she was 13 when the war started, has the ingredients which we are now in, because it's fear. Have you heard that? Did that come clear?
Yeah, I heard everything. Yeah, and I absolutely agree with you. There's two ways. There's two ways to motivate people. One with desire, and the other one with fear. They both work. But politicians use fear to motivate people, which is
definitely, yeah.
They shouldn't. They should offer desirable futures, not fearful. I should stop talking.
Yeah, and the other thing that I would bring up, so there's a lot more to that, but I'm just giving you that one example. And actually, I have been accused in June of breaking the law. One of my neighbours. Now, I wasn't breaking. They had a grudge against me about something. I was shocked at that. It made me realise when you have people that maybe don't grasp things fully, they will use the fear, the level of fear they're at is terrible. And I don't know if you the news yesterday or somebody in whatever, without a mask on and got it and had to go. Now, the other thing, the NHS, and I agree with you that freedom is what we want, and that this NHS Save the NHS was, and they had us all going outside like parrots, banging our bins, and I can tell you that the two people who live near me who work for the NHS would not go out and do it.
No.
Reason. And I've had quite interesting talks. I also have, I worked in the NHS, so I have somebody who's very, very high up, working out of London, working at NHS England Eye. And in June, she told me that there were going to be 3 waves. I said, you know, and I think that's very interesting.
It is.
I have, which I won't go into because I don't want to muddy your water, but I will just say things like Bilderberger, which is the slogans we get. I think any sane person who has been here to watch Boris bounce us up and down like yo-yos realizes there's something wrong. I mean,
Yes.
seriously. And
They
we are now
realise there's
having.
something wrong, but they can't figure out what it is.
Pardon?
They realise there's something wrong, but they can't figure out what it is because
Yeah,
they're tripped up by the health argument.
Yeah. And
Rachel, may I interrupt you? Because I want to ask, we've got 10 minutes and I know Stuart hasn't spoken. I just wanted to invite Stuart to speak. And I just wanted to find out if Stuart does have anything. Would that be all right? What's Rachel's mum's name?
Evelyn.
Evelyn.
Okay.
Stuart, you're there, I think. Would you like to say anything? Stuart?
His mic isn't working.
Oh.
His mic isn't
Thank
working.
you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Evelyn, sorry, you're back online then. Do you want to say anything else?
no, I don't want to say too much. I've got lots of thoughts about what's happening, and I think it is very serious.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that a message from Stuart? Okay, Lindsay's going to read out a message from Stuart.
No, he's just apologising because his camera and his mic aren't working.
Right.
Appreciate the meeting. We're battling against worldwide forces here. Every government in the world, with the only exception of North Korea, is following exactly the same tactics of removing our freedoms. COVID is a nasty virus, but for 99% of us, no worse than flu. This is very much as part of a much larger plan. You are right, Evelyn. This is an international agenda. They have made their move. Sorry, the mic isn't working.
Okay, so at the moment, there's 3 of us, 4 of us, 5 of us, 6 of us, and a dog. And I would like to take that diagram that I've got behind us and the arguments that we've got, and I would like to keep saying this effectively the same thing to more people. But in order to do that, I need help to get more people to come, because I sent out as many invites as I can, but the apathy factor is enormous. And so it's, you know, you can send out 100 and get this many. I think we send out maybe 200 and we got this many. So the attrition rate is huge.
Wow.
There are people who said they definitely would be here and they're not here. So we need to do what somebody says, what can we do? And I say, whatever we can. There's two options, do something or nothing, but I don't want to do nothing. So this is my something, as small as it is. And I think the thing to do is to keep repeating the message and seeing if we can grow a little, something small into something bigger. So what we've only got 8 minutes left. What I'd like to do is invite you to another meeting in say 2 weeks. If I send you another invite, and maybe over the next couple of days, send you another email with some more text. If you could please send me your email address to us, so that I can send you directly texts. And when I say texts, I mean TEXT, texts, so that you can show it to other people, pass it on, together with a link to our next meeting, where I'm hoping we might get up to maybe 20, say. If we could get 20, that would be a good win. And then 40, and then 80, and then, you know.
Yes, that's fine.
Great. So let's just take this as a seed, but from a little seed you can get big acorns, and then big acorns become big oak trees. So
It may be worth.
Yes, please.
Sorry, it may be worth sending out a reminder 2 hours before or something, just because there might be people who have forgotten about the meeting that they wanted to attend, but they've forgotten. So that would be worth doing, possibly, if you didn't.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, we'll do that, Becky. We do that when we're doing our corporate coach training stuff, but we forgot to do it today. So
well, this is your reminder to send a reminder.
This is a reminder to send a reminder. It's a good point to make. So I will we'll begin to close. We've got 6 minutes left. I want to thank you very much for the interest that you've shown. If you would please give us your emails, then we'll send you. I'm just going to go to the end of my.
Okay, put it out on LinkedIn. Send me the link and I'll forward it to my colleagues.
Yeah, that's great. I will, Stuart. I've got this as my last slide. Thank you for attending. We hope that you found it interesting. Come back next time and bring with you 2 more people. We would like to multiply our numbers by spreading the word and presenting, I call it a logical argument in favour of liberty over lockdown. And this is a presumption I've got. I presuppose there are literally millions of people out there who think like we are, but don't have the words. They know in their gut that this is wrong, but they don't have the words or the arguments in here to convince themselves. So they're on the fence. They follow along because they don't know why they shouldn't follow along. You see, they can't see that they're drifting into big trouble. So I want to make sure that we give people the logical, conceptual arguments that proves in here intellectually that this clapping for the NHS is a mask for something more dangerous. And once they see it, it will be game over, because when millions of people see the trick, it's like seeing a magician's trick. You realize it was just a stupid trick. But a lot of people are tricked by magicians, and these people are magicians with language. They've been studying it for decades, no, not decades, centuries. Yeah. It's called rhetoric. They're kings of rhetoric, and they haven't got a clue with logic. Yeah. So anyway, thank you very much for your attendance. Unless you've got anything else you want to add to what we've got 5 minutes. I'll hand it over to you.
Do it, Sharon.
Oh, hello, Evelyn.
Could I ask a question?
Please.
Well, it's more to do with, but somehow I've had other meetings, but this has been very different. It's in the way I would expect it to. So I keep seeing myself. I can't see you at all. And
Oh, your settings
I
wrong
don't know.
then.
Right. Okay. Thought there was something wrong. So I'm hoping that even if I had a practice Zoom connection with you at some point in time to make sure next time I get this right.
Yes, Becky, can I just make sure? Becky, can you see me?
Yes, I can.
Ah, yeah.
So if Becky can see me, it's not us. It must be yourself.
Can you
So,
see me?
I can see you.
Oh,
There's something wrong with your settings.
okay. Thank you. I'll sort
I
that
will
out.
send you a copy of my overheads, because if you didn't see my overheads, I'll send you them all, and then you can scan through them.
Okay. Yeah. let's do that.
And Rachel can help in a way because she's got all my email address and everything.
Okay, well, I'll send my visuals that you didn't see tonight. So you just heard my voice by the sound of it. I will send you the visuals that we've been using, and then you'll have seen everything.
Okay, thank you very much.
Can I just say it might be worth, it might be worth maybe sending a tweet out to people who are of similar minds that have got bigger names, like Emma Kenny, for instance, that woman with the red hair, the psychologist. Do you know who I mean?
If you could put your thinking cap on as to all the people that you think, because I don't know a lot of the people you know.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got a whole field of people that I'm oblivious to because I'm older than you. But if you've got a load of people in your mind, which I would have never heard of, please, spread the word, and I can give you the messages and the overheads. And this is why I think we could start small and get bigger.
Yeah. Okay. If you send me everything that you've completed, put together, and I'll send it across to people I know and people I am aware think the same way.
Wonderful. Okay, so we'll meet again in about 2 weeks' time. We'll finalise a date, and we're speaking about either a week or 2 weeks, depending on diaries. But I want to thank you for tonight, and have a lovely evening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.